Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Adita Karkera, Chief Data Officer of the Government and Public Services Practice with Deloitte. We're collaborating with CDO Magazine in a series of interviews of government leaders. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Josh Martin, Chief Data Officer for the state of Indiana. Josh, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you talk a little bit more about who are the participants in the Data Governance Council and who chairs it? Are you, as a CDO, chairing that for the state? And if you want to provide some more details on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was an initiative that I started and that I do chair our Enterprise Data Governance Council. It's part of my responsibilities to advise and assist on these efforts, other state executive agencies. I knew it was a need. We had seen some action that was happening at the federal level as a follow-up to the Foundations for Evidence-Based Practice Act of 2018. We saw this emergence of federal CDOs, the federal Data Governance Council bringing these folks together. And we knew that it was something that was going to be really important for us to do because as one small organization and service provider, we can't do it for everybody. We need to bring everybody together so that we can, figure out the right enterprise policies that we need to work in. Where do we have gaps? Where can people learn from each other in terms of what they're doing? How can we, leverage the knowledge that's already within the state to figure out how we can collectively do governance better, do data management better. Work on these strategies together. So we started during COVID, of course, because why not? You don't have enough on your plate already. Why not start another major initiative? But really started with how do we get the right people in the same room at the same time on a regular basis so that we can just have a discussion about what's important, what struggles are we facing, what are the things that we want to approach as an enterprise, what can we learn from one another. And there's so many moving pieces across, such a large organization as state government. It's hard to keep your finger on the pulse of everything that's moving. So we started inviting major partners that we had worked with and major, data holding agencies, our Department of Transportation, Family and Social Services Administration, Health Department, our sister agencies from the Office of Management and Budget, which includes our Department of Revenue, which is, somebody that everybody in the state has to work with at least once a year, usually. Our Bureau of Motor Vehicles, Department of Corrections, and State Police. So getting all these big actors in a room and an invitation saying, hey, I reached out to all of my fellow state agency heads and said, hey, we have this data proficiency program we're going to launch. And could you send me, the person that has primary responsibility for data in your organization? Because we're going to stand up this council and try to get folks together. And that's really how it started. Invited them to come to the first meeting, said, my job is to give you guys resources to help develop statewide policies that can help fill some of these gaps. But in order to identify those, I need input from all of you folks. I can't do it in a vacuum. I can't do it in my own space. So can we get together? Can we then, you're asking for a lot of time from a lot of high value individuals to kind of fit you into their calendar. So try to figure out the right, cadence for those meetings. So every other month we get together for an hour for those discussions. But from that, structuring it in a way that it can be effective for all. So under the Data Governance Council, there's these advisory committees that are really focused on specific topics, whether it be a domain like health and human services or public safety, where those agencies specifically can get together and talk about the important things that are related to their data struggles or their data challenges. And the folks from the state police department really don't want to sit and have a discussion about ICD-10 codes with the health department and family social services agencies. Likewise, I don't think they would be as interested in talking about some of the things that happen in the public safety space, but they're important conversations for those entities to have, and giving them a space and a structure to start having those conversations was really important to us. But then also, from those first initial couple of meetings, we started to highlight other areas where it would be good to get an advisory group together to kind of focus on those. One was on personnel. How do we get a standardized way of looking at what data personnel do we need? It's really an emerging space that we haven't had those classifications specifically laid out for, a data engineer versus a data analyst versus a data scientist versus a BI person. So our personnel subcommittee got put together, and we're bringing in, other folks from different agencies that might not be on the large data governance council, but they're definitely contributing in these advisory spaces. Another one on privacy. And privacy is, as you'd mentioned, is such an important aspect of this as well. And maintaining citizens' privacy as we're bringing more data assets together is, the highest priority for us. So my chief privacy officer, who sits in the management performance hub, is chairing that advisory committee where we're having discussions around things like masking and things like suppression. Do we need a statewide suppression standard? Because there's a lot of different federal regulations around suppression and states policies around suppression. So how can we kind of harmonize those, and how can we, figure out better ways that we can all work together and figure out where we have policy gaps that need to be filled, that so we can have a central policy to look to. So trying to not do it in a vacuum, trying to not be a black box organization in creating some of these quality policies or data policies, and leveraging the talent and the knowledge that we have across all of our partner agencies and bringing this group together has just been so valuable. It's been a passion of mine. I've worked on expanding resources for all of these folks, getting them in front of them. We've looked at different industry standards, and we're really trying to be, that go-to place, the place where anyone can go to across the state is their resource when it comes to data governance or data strategy, or trying to figure out these hard problems. So that's been our focus. We've had great success getting folks engaged, on board, and excited, and I'm really excited with the progress we're making. And it's something that's never going to go away. I mean, this is a structure that we need for data governance to become part of our line of business, to part of our day-to-day business. We've kind of gone from this, unconsciously incompetence of data governance. We didn't know what it was. We couldn't define it. We didn't know what we weren't doing. To, oh yeah, this is data governance. We've kind of been doing it, but we're not good at it. So we've kind of become consciously incompetent, and we're trying to move into this consciously competent phase where we know what data governance is and we're getting good at doing it. And then eventually into this unconscious competence where it just becomes part of our day-to-day work, that everybody understands data governance is important, that documentation is important, that they're thinking about downstream impacts of data, and how do we focus on data as a product and secondary use of it. So, I mean, it's really an organizational change that needs to happen with the culture and the way that we think about things, and this structure is the foundation for that.
Wow. So from being consciously incompetent to being consciously competent, I mean, what a journey. I mean, you've talked about how you're working on increasing data proficiency. You've talked about balancing multiple stakeholders, priorities, bringing together stakeholders from different departments, your focus on data governance, quality, privacy, compliance. We've talked about a multitude of topics just now, Josh. I'm curious though, like if I was an Indiana resident, what would be one nugget or a success story that you want to share that would highlight for them why it's all worth it, why it's worth it to take care of the data that is available across the multitude of agencies in the state, why it's worth it? Do you have anything that you might want to add there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest successes kind of we had through this whole COVID engagement was how do we identify all the citizens that live in the state, and how can we notify them, hey, it's your turn to get a vaccine? And how can we do that in a more personalized manner? How can we figure out what the true population prevalence is of COVID? That was something that was really unknown at the beginning of the pandemic. We knew that there was symptomatic and asymptomatic people, but we didn't know really what is a primary number that needs to be input into some of these forecasting models, what that prevalence is. So there was a lot of guessing. Well, we worked with the Fairbanks School of Public Health in doing the first, and I believe only of its kind, population prevalence study to figure out what is that number. So we worked by generating across administrative data sets what was pretty close to a true, here's the different folks that live in the state of Indiana, that they could then do some stratified random sampling on, mail them a postcard and invite them to go get tested to see if they had COVID or not. And then they could actually figure out what that number was. As you know, working in this world, that states don't have a select from master citizen index. It's just not the way that our administrative systems have ever been set up. And also, when you do start to create something like that, I mean, compiling more data together in one spot, it becomes a very valuable asset, and an asset that needs to be protected appropriately. You're putting a lot of information in one place. You want to make sure that privacy is protected, that data, that there's no exfiltration of that data, that it can only be used for the right purposes. So we created that data asset, and we were able to use it for the study. And then we also focused on the reuse of that. So we were able to reuse that when we went to the notifications of folks to send, either postcards or text messages to say, hey, it's your turn. You're up next for getting your COVID vaccine. So we were able to do that notification process. And then further and even more granular use of that was when we were doing these mobile pop-up clinics. We were able to target specific areas to send out notifications to let people know, hey, there's a mobile clinic coming to your area. Go here and you can schedule yourself an appointment. So we've gotten a lot of reuse out of what is a very valuable data asset, which hopefully that gave our citizens better information about when they were eligible to get the vaccine, how to get the vaccine. And I think that put us up ahead of some other entities in terms of doing that outreach more strategically and more personally.
Thanks for sharing that, Josh. I know we could continue talking about some of these topics all day, but I know we're trying to wrap this up right now. And I want to ask you one final question. You've obviously seen a lot of success in your role as a CDO. What is your advice to other budding CDOs and to that next generation of CDOs who are listening today?
Wow, the work's hard. It is really hard. We're all working with a number of different legacy systems. We're all at different levels of maturity. Especially when you start working across an enterprise like state government, you're going to have entities that are very advanced from a technology and data management standpoint, to some that haven't had the resources other than maybe Excel and some Access databases to do a whole lot of in that work. So there's a lot of work that has to be done, and it can feel like you're really just running into a brick wall over and over again, especially when you're trying to figure out legal and data sharing and how do you make all this work. It can feel like it's going really slow, but it's really important to keep your eye on the prize and realize that you can continue to get better. Focus on the problems that you can solve today. Focus on those wins that you can continue to generate more value from. Similar to the work that we did with creating the citizen data asset for doing that study. Instead of just saying, okay, we're done with that asset now, we figure ways to continue to repurpose it. So as you do projects like that and you're building these data assets that you have, build them with reuse in mind. Build them with thinking about, okay, how can I generate more value from that? Start thinking about your data as a product. How can I promote this product? How can I continue to improve this product? That really changes the mindset. All the tools are there from a technology standpoint. It really is just a cultural change and trying to think about how do we continue to work better towards our main initiative, which is providing better citizen services and doing that securely and doing that with privacy in mind, and keeping all of these things at the front of mind. It's a daunting task. There's no shortage of challenges, and you're going to have no shortage of failures along the way. But it's really just continue to focus on the things that are the most important, that can provide the best impact. Celebrate your wins. Celebrate your wins with your partners, with your fellow state agencies, with external organizations that you work with. Take some time to pick your head up and look back at how far you've came, because you can lose sight of how far you've actually came in some of these spaces. We're only 5 years old as an organization, and we've grown pretty large, in my opinion, in terms of how fast government organizations grow. But bringing those right capabilities in at the right time, and make sure that you're leveraging the assets that you have across your different state entities. There's going to be data champions out there that you haven't had the opportunity to work with. Figure out how you can find those folks. Start up communities that are having get-togethers around BI or data science or those things, so that you can find your good partners, because everybody's out there really trying to provide the best public good, and we're all on the same team. And when we can work together, we can really move mountains.
Well, great pieces of advice, Josh. Focus on the problem, leverage data as an asset, continue to find those data champions, and focus on getting your quick wins. Thank you so much for your time today, Josh. I think the audience is going to absolutely enjoy hearing your perspectives that you've shared with us today. And for everyone else who's listening, please continue to visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews and insights.
Thank you.